Hey guys, so I am in my office, and in case you didn't know, April is Autism Awareness Month, and I kind of wanted to share some things with you about Autism Awareness Month and some other helpful tips for individuals who are on the spectrum. But before I get started, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. So by now, most people are familiar with autism. There are a lot of different shows like The Good Doctor and other shows that are out there that kind of tell you or give you more information about what someone on the spectrum may experience. So basically, autism is a group of neurodevelopmental disorders that may look like repetitive behavior, restrictive behaviors, maybe some problems or issues with communication. Of course, the spectrum is wide, okay? So that's why it's called a spectrum. No one person is the same. No one person is going to have the same experience or may have the same type of concerns that someone else may have. So you do want to keep that in mind. Just because you meet one person on the spectrum or you saw one person's experience, that doesn't mean that it's going to be the same across the board. So here are a few tips and strategies. As someone who works with students who are on the spectrum and who has for a while, here are some of the things that have helped me out. So one of the first things is that when you're giving instructions or just having a conversation, you want to be concrete. So that means that you want to make things clear. Sometimes students on the spectrum may have difficulty with reading in between the lines or understanding different jokes. I know sometimes, especially in the South, like we like to use a lot of euphemisms and things of that nature, but students on the spectrum may have a hard time understanding those things. So you want to make sure that you're being clear. Just get to the point, basically. You don't have to go all around and about. Just say what it is that you need to say so the person can understand and just have a better social experience with you. Sensory overload is another key tip that you could utilize when working with someone who's on the spectrum. So when I say sensory overload, I'm talking about anything that has to do with your senses. Taste, sight, smell, hearing, touch, all of that. Like right now, to record this video, I have the overhead light on in my office, but this light is so bright, like even I have to just kind of squint my eyes sometimes. For a student on the spectrum, that may be magnified. Lots of noise may be something that a student on the spectrum may not be interested in being around, because sensory overload is one of those things that you may find that student having some issues with. So, ways that you can minimize sensory overload, maybe going to a quiet space, maybe making sure that the lighting is not so bright. So maybe if you're outside, you kind of sit away from the noise and then you utilize some shade from a nearby tree or covering. Those are some ways that you can just make sure that if someone that you're interacting with is on the spectrum, that they are comfortable. Most importantly, remember, everyone who's on the spectrum is unique. Nobody is the same. Nobody has the same experience, like I said earlier. So you don't want to use a one-size-fits-all approach. If you're unsure, just ask the person. I always tell our peer mentors that if you don't know, if you have a question about something, if you want to make sure that you're being appropriate, that you're interacting the right way, and that you're encouraging that person's social skills, just ask. There's nothing wrong with asking if you don't know. So I want to tell you a little bit about my experience as someone who was a former teacher who worked with students who are on the spectrum. So a few years ago, I lived in Miami, about 2 years now, and my first teaching job there was a self-contained classroom, 5th through 8th graders with students who were on the spectrum. So when I say self-contained, that means that I taught all subjects and that we stayed in the same classroom the whole day. So at first, I remember thinking, oh my gosh. Now, I had worked with students who were on the spectrum before, but their communication skills were a lot more kind of open and advanced. And the students that I started working with back when I lived in Miami, they were kind of learning those building blocks. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be so hard. And it was hard in the beginning, especially because I had just started grad school, I had just moved to a new city, and I had just started a new teaching job. So a lot was actually going on for me personally. was actually one of the most rewarding experiences that I think about now as a teacher. I probably think about it like every day because I just learned so much. And one of the main things that I learned were about communication styles. So going back to what I said earlier, if you're unsure about something, ask the student. Now, they may not be able to communicate on a level that you're used to. That's why you got to get creative. So I got creative a lot. I used a lot of visuals. I used a lot of dancing. That was one thing that I really enjoyed. I love seeing my students dance. So we did a lot of dancing. We did a lot of just fun, interactive, animated videos that taught basic concepts, and it was such a good time. So when I think about working with students with autism, I always think about my students that I work with in Miami. So if any of y'all are watching this video, hey from Miss Dugan, make sure you drop down in the comments and let me know that you're out there. I had such a great time, and it's something that I will always recommend, especially as a teacher, and especially for my special education teachers. You always want to challenge yourself. You never want to work in the same type of environment. You always want to push yourself. You want to push your own skills so that you can help students. There are so many students out there who are on the spectrum that a lot of people may be kind of afraid to work with because they're not sure of what to expect. Take it one day at a time. Make sure that you're communicating constantly. Make sure that you're finding different ways to teach concepts and materials, and I guarantee that it will be one of the best experiences that you could have ever imagined. So how can you be a friend or an ally to someone who's on the spectrum? So first off, you want to make sure that you're creating a safe space. You can do that by making sure that you're not tolerating any inappropriate comments about our disability community, period, but about individuals who are on the spectrum. You want to make sure that you are encouraging social skills. So let's say that you are working with students who are on the spectrum or co-workers. Maybe you just tell them hello every day. Maybe that person doesn't say much, but you don't give up. You keep making sure that you're doing your part by being someone who is friendly and upstanding, and that will ultimately encourage that person to kind of want to get to know you more. You also want to make sure that you're aware of sensory overload. So I talked about this overhead light in my office earlier that's really, really bright, that could really disturb someone who's on the spectrum with all of this bright light. You want to think about noise, loud noises. Something, sometimes as simple as that noisy pencil sharpener, you could just replace it with one that's more quieter. There are always things that you could do that are free. Just a simple Google search will kind of bring those things up for you. I can think about a time where I was working with a student and we were doing something with Special Olympics, and he was on the swing. Okay, so like aerodynamics and like swinging, like students on the spectrum love things like that. He loved it so much. I remember they were giving out popsicles. He would not get off of that swing, not even for a popsicle. So you want to think about just like friendly seating and things like that, where someone may be able to swing or kind of turn around to kind of get those aerodynamics going. Alright guys, so I hope this video was helpful for you. Drop down in the comments and let me know if you have any questions about working with students, or not even students, co-workers on the spectrum. If you like any more tips or strategies, I'd be happy to help you out. I'm also going to do a write-up on my blog, so check me out over there at dukeanddigsdisability.org, and I'll see you this weekend for an Adult Daily Living Skills video. Happy Autism Awareness Month. Make sure you're wearing your blue. I got my blue on today. I got blue nails. I'm going to be rocking blue this whole month, so make sure you're doing the same as well.